Less than 2 months ago, wildlife officials in the state of Arkansas reported a hunter had killed a mountain lion. Now, that happened in Bradley County, not so far away from the Mississippi border, where a handful of people report panther sightings every year. Now, into the latest sighting this Mystery Monday.
Headed outside on a chilly morning in Gluckstadt, a pair of dogs greet Cindy Caswell.
That one's Tobar, the darker one, and then that's my baby Honey.
The pets are part doorbell, part security system for the tiny home along Highway 51.
I think it kind of came from this side right here.
And they had a front row spot for one of the latest panther sightings in Mississippi.
Last weekend, I was laying in my little cabin outside here, and I heard the dogs barking, and they were just kind of acting all crazy and wild. Then I heard like this sound that was like next to my house. It was either under or next to it, but it was kind of like a low growling noise. They kind of joked about it a little bit, but then a couple of days later, my dad called me and he told me that my mom had went out to the end of the road to get the girls off the bus.
I'm standing out there by the street and the dogs start barking. I didn't pay no attention to it. And then their bark got worse, more alarming. So I looked back. And as I looked back, there was a big black cat going across the yard and went into the wood line. Normally, any cat with dogs barking like that would react, but this didn't. It didn't pay no attention to anything. It was like focused on the woods, and that's what it did.
The previous owner of this home told the family that he had to bring in a few hundred dump trucks worth of dirt to build this area up. Now, why is that? This is actually the start of a creek. And do you know what the name of this creek is? Panther Creek. But a name doesn't mean there's proof. The official position of the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks is that there is not enough physical evidence to confirm a sighting. And that was the case here.
My dad had called them and they had came out, but they said they couldn't find any tracks and that there was no such thing as panthers being in Mississippi. It just came through the yard behind the car and into the path of the opening right there. Most of the time during the day, no one really comes out here. And so it probably, didn't know she was out there. She grew up, in the straight country. If she says that's what it is, then I really believe her because she knows what she's talking about. They love it when company comes, so that's when they get excited, is when something's here or someone.
Exploring the unexplained this Mystery Monday, Jacob Kittilstad, WJTV News Channel 12.
So how can you get a sighting confirmed? Well, wildlife officials say photographs, videos, definite tracks, or even a fresh kill may be enough. And even more importantly, those reports need to be made in a timely manner. In our country, it's against the law to possess even just one feather off a bald eagle. It's certainly illegal to shoot one, but during the Civil War, those laws didn't exist. In fact, Union soldiers carried one bird, a mascot of sorts, into battle at Vicksburg, and the story gets more strange from there this Mystery Monday. Jacob Kittilstad brings his tale back to the nest.
The heavy-duty gloves are the sign of a bird handler at the Jackson Zoo.
This is the zoo's raptor rehab flight cage.
And inside that space, vet technician Donna Todd says, is a practice area for this bird, discovered injured in Rankin County. A bald eagle found bathing in its own blood.
But the bird is still not flying. The bird was on the ground for a reason, and there were signs of possible, gunshot, that was healing.
Now, I can't show you what actually goes on in the flight cage. The rehabbers say that's actually against federal law. But what I can do is bring you the video I took of this bird when it was first brought to Jackson with its buckshot wound. It's majestic, even as it was behind bars at North State Animal Hospital. It looked like this statue atop the Wisconsin monument at Vicksburg National Military Park. The birds even share similar injuries.
Well, the Confederate soldiers began to call Old Abe that Yankee buzzard. And all the Confederates were trying to shoot the Yankee buzzard. And they hit him one time. They knocked a couple of feathers out, but that was all.
That's right. This statue represents an actual bird. Louis Logue, a park guide, says the bald eagle, who was named after the president, acted as a mascot for Company C of the 8th Wisconsin Volunteer Regiment.
And in every skirmish, they would carry Old Abe tethered on a pole, and when the firing got intense, then Old Abe's screech would get intense, and that would give the troops the adrenaline to keep pushing forward.
The Eagle survived 36 face-offs with Confederate troops. Generals, including U.S. Grant, tipped their hats to this bird. And after the Battle of Tupelo, Old Abe returned home to the Dairy State.
Governor Lewis immediately built a two-room apartment in the rotunda of the Capitol at Madison, even with a private bath. A year later, there was a fire in the Capitol. Old Abe sounded the alarm, but it was too late. Old Abe took in the black smoke. A couple of months later, Old Abe died. Well, about 6 months later, they stuffed Old Abe, and they brought Old Abe back into the rotunda, put him in a glass case for people to see. The next year, 1903, Old Abe was burned up. The Capitol caught on fire and burnt the whole thing up. But Old Abe is not dead. The patch on the sleeve of the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, is Old Abe.
The approach to handling raptors now is very different. Despite being shot, this eagle's never seen war, it's never been a pet, and the goal here is to eventually release it when it's strong enough.
But when a bird comes in for wildlife rescue, that bird doesn't want to be around a lot of people. It's used to being in the woods, so we're a little protective, and, we want to, we're speaking for the bird, basically.
Exploring the unexplained this Mystery Monday, Jacob Kittilstad, WJTV News Channel 12.
Thank you, Jake. And historians say although the Civil War, the eagle was named Old Abe, but it was actually a female bird, maybe Old Abigail. And the bald eagle, currently recovering after its shooting, well, its sex is still undetermined.
And welcome back, everyone. Eudora Welty had a way of preserving things, not physically, but through her writing. This is the case in Rodney, Mississippi, where nature slowly but surely taking back the abandoned city, no matter what's in its path. The forest has already devoured parts of the local cemetery. Jacob Kittilstad goes into the woods this Mystery Monday.
Everywhere there, the hanging moss and the upthrust stones were in that strange graveyard shade where, by the light they give, the moss seems made of stone and the stone of moss.
The words of Eudora Welty are perhaps even more true now than when she wrote them. Rodney Cemetery is an amalgam. Nature meets history, nature eats history. And there's no better representation of that fact than the gravestone of Charles Amasa Clark. Can't see it? It's right there. Look. Well, you may need to look deeper. It's completely encased in a tree trunk, suffocated after about 140 years of existence.
Some men warned me about going up that hill. They yelled out, "Watch out for snakes." That was good advice. There were snakes up there. If we look up here, you'll see the eye of the story on the second shelf down.
Suzanne Mars is Eudora Welty's biographer and her friend when the author was still alive.
The image was sort of engraved in her memory.
She says she can't help but look at Rodney through the lens of Welty's life. The connection to the city started when the author was a young woman.
And when Eudora Welty would take that trip to Rodney, a pretty far drive, she would find a place both overrun with vegetation and overrun with stories. Frankly, a place worth writing about.
Rodney, or Rodney's Landing, as it was once called, was a spark to Eudora Welty's imagination. She visited there, she photographed the town. She called it a lost town. It's a sort of ghost town, but not really a ghost town because people still live there. She said a place that has been lived in is like a fire that never goes out.
Coincidentally, a fire might be one of the only real ways to free the grave marker of the late Mr. Clark. Once, a man with a saw tried to free it, but only got so far. This picture's from 2007, 2010, and this year shows the tree sucking it back in. When the marker was readable decades ago, the only story it told was that of a 28-year-old who died in Tensaw Parish, Louisiana. Eudora Welty probably could have read it if she wanted to, but now the anonymous tree blends into the forest, standing, if you'd like, as a monument to life continuing and overtaking death.
I'm looking at those gravestones and seeing a cemetery that's much more overgrown than it was when she was there. But still, there's a lot in her description. Stairways and terraces and whole hanging gardens of green and flowering vines with a Babylonian babble of hundreds of creature voices that make up the silence of Rodney's Landing. Here are nests for birds and thrones for owls and trapezes for snakes, every kind of bower in the world.
Exploring the unexplained this Mystery Monday, Jacob Kittilstad, WJTV News Channel 12.
Eudora Welty wrote about Rodney in 3 of her books, an essay and The Eye of the Storm, and 2 works of fiction, The Wide Net and The Robber Bridegroom.